Welcome back, everyone, to a new story. We really hope you enjoy it. Of all the things I thought might happen on a perfectly ordinary Friday, becoming a girl wasn't even on the list. Not in the top 10, not in the top million. My life was simple, predictable, and revolved around two things: basketball and my best friend, Luke. You have to understand about me and Luke. We were the kind of friends people write stories about. The inseparable duo since middle school. We learned to drive in his beat-up pickup truck, celebrated our first legal beers at the same dive bar, and spent more nights on his couch playing video games than I've spent in my own bed. He was the brother I never had. Our communication was a language of shared glances, inside jokes, and the unspoken understanding that comes from knowing someone better than you know yourself. Our world was one of worn-out jerseys, the squeak of sneakers on a court, the glow of a TV screen at 2 a.m., and the comfortable, easy silence of male friendship. It was simple. It was our normal. That Friday night started like any other. I was at his apartment, sprawled on the floor with a controller in my hand, desperately trying to defend my virtual goal from his relentless attack. Pizza boxes were stacked precariously on the coffee table, a testament to our lazy culinary skills. "You're going down, man," Luke said, his eyes glued to the screen, a triumphant smirk playing on his lips. "In your dreams, buddy," I shot back, mashing buttons. "My defense is a fortress." A moment later, his character scored. The digital crowd roared. I threw my controller onto the beanbag chair with a groan. "Fine, you win. Best 2 out of 3. Luke laughed, leaning back and stretching. "Nah, I've got something better." He paused, and the air in the room shifted. It was a subtle change, but I knew his tells. This was his "I have a secret" look, a glint in his eye, a barely suppressed smile. "Better than pizza and video games, I doubt it," I said, grabbing a lukewarm slice of pepperoni. He reached over to the side table and picked up 2 glossy, high-end envelopes. He dangled them in front of my face. They were heavy, embossed with gold lettering. "Behold," he announced with mock grandeur, "VIP tickets to the world premiere of Starfall Odyssey." I choked on my pizza. Starfall Odyssey wasn't just a movie, it was the movie, the one we'd been counting down the days to for over a year. The trailers looked epic. The reviews were already calling it a masterpiece, and tickets were impossible to get. "No way," I breathed, snatching one from his hand. "How did you score these? Did you sell a kidney?" "Better," he said, that smirk widening. "My uncle, the one who works for the studio, pulled some major strings. Red carpet, pre-screening lounge, the whole deal." My mind was already racing, the flashing cameras, the celebrities, the sheer coolness of it all. This is insane, we're going to be legends. I looked closer at the ticket, my excitement bubbling over. Then I saw the fine print at the bottom. My face fell. "Wait a second," I said, my voice flat. "It says here, admit to couples only package." I looked up at him, my brain trying to process this new, disappointing information. Couples only, seriously. "So you have a secret girlfriend you haven't told me about? Who is she? When did this happen?" A million questions were firing in my head. Had Luke, my partner in crime, the guy who complained about dating as much as I did, been holding out on me? He just smiled. It was a slow, enigmatic smile that didn't answer a single one of my questions. It was a smile that held a universe of meaning I couldn't begin to decipher. "Don't worry about the details, Daniel," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "Just be ready tomorrow night, 7 o'clock sharp, dressed to impress." I wanted to press him, to demand an answer, but he just shrugged and turned the game back on, effectively ending the conversation. The rest of the night was a blur of confusion on my part. I kept trying to piece it together. Was he setting me up on a blind date with his new girlfriend's friend? That seemed like a classic Luke move. But the way he was acting, it was different. It was weird. There was an undercurrent of something I couldn't place: excitement, mischief, something more. I went home that night with a pit of unease in my stomach. The thrill of the premiere was now tangled up with a knot of anxiety. I trusted Luke with my life, but I also knew he had a penchant for elaborate, sometimes questionable, schemes. This felt like his masterpiece in the making. I just had no idea that I was going to be the canvas. The next morning, I woke up feeling groggy but determined to get some answers. I figured a good, long shower would clear my head. The hot water felt amazing, washing away the remnants of sleep and the vague sense of dread that had followed me home from Luke's place. I let the steam fill the small bathroom, my mind drifting back to the premiere. Whatever Luke had planned, it was going to be an adventure. It always was with him. I stepped out of the shower, wrapping a towel around my waist, feeling refreshed and ready to face the day and my cryptic best friend. I reached for the hook where I'd hung my clothes last night, my favorite gray t-shirt and a pair of worn-in jeans. My hand met empty air. I blinked, wiping a patch of steam off the mirror. I looked again. The hook was bare. That was strange. I was sure I'd left them there. Maybe they fell. I scanned the tiled floor. Nothing. Okay. Very funny. Luke, I yelled, assuming he'd somehow snuck in while I was showering. It was exactly the kind of stupid prank he'd pull. Silence. I opened the bathroom door a crack and peeked out. My entire bedroom was empty of my clothes. The chair where I'd tossed my hoodie was bare. The laundry basket in the corner, which was usually overflowing, was completely empty. A cold, sharp sense of panic started to prickle at the back of my neck. This went beyond a simple prank. "Luke, what the hell is going on?" I shouted, my voice echoing in the quiet apartment. A soft knock came at the bathroom door. "Daniel?" It was Luke's voice, calm and collected. "Yeah, it's me. Where are all my clothes?" "This isn't funny, man. I'm standing here in a towel." "I know," he said. The door creaked open just enough for him to toss something inside. It landed on the bath mat with a soft, delicate thud. "Trust me on this," he said, his voice laced with that same mysterious amusement from last night. "Just put it on. You'll understand everything once you do." The door clicked shut, leaving me alone in the steamy bathroom. My heart was pounding now, a mixture of anger and genuine confusion. What was he playing at? I looked down at the floor. Lying there, a splash of shocking color against the white tile, was a bra. It wasn't just any bra. It was a delicate, lacy, flamingo pink thing with thin straps and intricate floral patterns. It was the most unapologetically feminine piece of clothing I had ever seen up close. And I was supposed to put it on. I stood there, naked except for the towel around my waist, water dripping from my hair onto my shoulders. In one hand, I held the doorknob, ready to storm out and strangle my best friend. In the other, I imagined picking up that flimsy piece of lace. I was trapped. I was angry. I was bewildered. And if I'm being completely, terrifyingly honest with myself, deep down in a place I didn't want to acknowledge, I felt a tiny, bizarre flicker of curiosity. This was the start of it. The moment my simple, predictable world shattered into a million confusing, terrifying, and strangely beautiful pieces. My first instinct was to throw it back out the door. My second was to yell every curse word I knew. I settled on a third option, staring at the pink lace contraption on my floor as if it were a venomous snake. "Are you insane?" I yelled through the door. "I am not putting this on, Luke. Whatever stupid game you're playing, it's over." "It's not a game," his voice came back, infuriatingly patient. "It's the only way we can go to the premiere. Just try it. What's the worst that could happen?" "What's the worst that could happen?" I sputtered. "I'm a guy guys don't wear that. Just this once, Kyle." He coaxed. For Starfall Odyssey, for the red carpet, for me. I hated him. I hated him for knowing exactly which buttons to push. The premiere was our dream, and he was holding it hostage with a piece of women's underwear. My anger was a hot fire in my chest, but beneath it, that weird curiosity was still there, a tiny, persistent ember. What could possibly be the point of this? How could wearing a bra solve our couples-only ticket problem? The logic was non-existent, which only made me more intrigued. With a deep, frustrated sigh that seemed to drain all the fight out of me. I bent down and picked it up. The lace was surprisingly soft, cool against my fingertips. It felt alien, impossibly delicate. It weighed almost nothing. I held it up, examining the strange architecture of it, the two cups, the thin straps, the row of tiny hooks and eyes at the back. It was a puzzle. "Fine," I muttered to the empty room, my voice dripping with resentment. "But if this is some kind of humiliation ritual, I swear I will end you." My hands felt clumsy and huge as I tried to figure it out. I turned it around, fumbling with the straps. I eventually decided to wrap it around my chest and try to do up the hooks at the back. My fingers struggled with the tiny fasteners, my frustration mounting with each failed attempt. I felt like a bear trying to thread a needle. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I heard a satisfying little click. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding and slid the straps up over my shoulders. And then I just stood there. The sensation was bizarre. The band was snug against my ribs, a constant, firm pressure I'd never felt before. The straps dug ever so slightly into my shoulders, a reminder of the foreign object I was now wearing. The lace of the empty cups was a cool, scratchy whisper against my skin. It was uncomfortable, restrictive, and utterly ridiculous. I felt like I was wearing a costume for a play I hadn't auditioned for. I was about to rip it off and declare the experiment a failure when something happened. It started as a tingle, a faint, pins and needles sensation right in the center of my chest. I frowned, placing a hand over my sternum. The tingling grew stronger, warmer, spreading outwards across my pectoral muscles. It wasn't painful, but it was deeply, profoundly strange. It felt like my entire chest was waking up. I watched, mesmerized and horrified. In the steamy mirror, my flat, muscular chest began to change. The skin seemed to soften, and the muscles beneath started to swell, but not in the way they did after a workout. This was different. It was a rounding, a plumping. The process was unnervingly fast. Within seconds, the empty space in the pink lace cups was filling up. My chest pushed forward, creating two soft, perfectly formed mounds. I gasped, a choked, involuntary sound. I reached up with a trembling hand and touched one of them. It was soft, pliable, warm. It felt real. My brain short-circuited. I poked it again, harder this time. It yielded under my finger like a breast. These were actual, honest-to-God breasts on my chest. The bathroom door opened, and Luke walked in, a victorious grin plastered all over his face. He was holding a glass of orange juice as if it were the most normal Saturday morning in the world. "See," he said, gesturing at my new anatomy with his glass. "Told you you'd understand." My voice came out as a strangled squeak. "Luke, what? What did you do to me?" He took a casual sip of his juice. "It's a little project I've been working on. A new chemical compound. It's woven into the fibers of the fabric. When it makes contact with skin for more than, say, 30 seconds, it triggers a temporary hormonal cascade. Basically, it convinces the body to temporarily reconstruct itself based on the garment. A bra makes breasts. Pants would probably, you get the picture." I stared at him, my mind struggling to grasp the sheer insanity of what he was saying. "You're a chemistry major, not a mad scientist. You drugged me with a bra." My anger came roaring back, 10 times stronger than before, fueled by a healthy dose of pure terror. "Change me back. Right now I'm not doing this. Luke, you're crazy." "I can't change you back," he said simply. "The effect lasts until the garment is removed for a few hours. It's designed to be stable." He set his juice down and his expression softened slightly. "Look, Dan, I'm sorry I didn't tell you the whole plan. I knew you'd never agree. But think about it. The premiere? They're looking for couples. I go as me, and you go as my date. It's foolproof. We get in. We watch the movie of a lifetime. We go home. You take the stuff off. And by morning, you're back to your old, boring self. One night, that's all I'm asking. He had an answer for everything. It was maddening. But he was also right. The logic, as insane as it was sound. They needed a couple. He had just created one. I turned back to the mirror. My upper body was now undeniably female. The soft curves of my new breasts contrasted jarringly with my masculine shoulders, my defined arms, the stubble on my jaw. I looked like a bizarre hybrid, a creature from a mythology I didn't know. It was terrifying. It was grotesque. And yet, I couldn't look away. There was a strange, forbidden allure to the reflection staring back at me. The shape was new. The silhouette was alien. Part of me was screaming in protest, but another, quieter part of me was captivated. For the first time in my life, I was looking at myself and seeing a complete stranger. My panic was a wild animal thrashing inside a cage, but Luke was the calm, methodical zookeeper. He seemed to have anticipated my every reaction, my every protest. While I was still trying to reconcile the sight in the mirror with the reality of my own body, he disappeared and came back with an armful of clothes. "The transformation isn't complete," he said, his voice practical, as if he were explaining how to assemble a piece of furniture. "The chemical works in stages. Each piece you put on will continue the process." He laid the first item on my bed. It was a little black dress, made of a stretchy, form-fitting material. It was short, dangerously short, the kind of dress I'd seen girls wear in clubs, the kind my eyes would have followed for all the wrong reasons. "No," I said, my voice shaking. "No way. Luke, a bra is one thing, but a dress I can't." "You have to," he insisted, holding it up. "Think of it as a uniform for our mission." His framing of it as a mission was a low blow, appealing directly to our years of video game-fueled fantasies. Reluctantly, feeling like I had no other choice, I took the dress. The fabric was cool and slinky in my hands. I dropped my towel, my cheeks burning with shame, and pulled the dress on over my head. The sensation was instantaneous and overwhelming. A wave of warmth washed over my entire body, 1,000 times more intense than the tingling in my chest. I felt my skin tighten and smooth, like it was being shrink-wrapped. The light dusting of hair on my arms and legs vanished, leaving behind skin that felt as soft and slick as polished marble. My waist cinched inwards, my hips flared out, creating an hourglass shape I'd only ever seen on models. I felt my shoulders narrow slightly, my collarbones becoming more delicate and pronounced. I stumbled, my center of gravity completely altered. Luke was there to steady me, his hands on my new, surprisingly narrow shoulders. "Easy there, he said, a hint of awe in his voice. He handed me the next piece, a simple white crop top. "This goes over it." I pulled it on, and the soft cotton felt heavenly against my hypersensitive new skin. It settled just above my navel, exposing a strip of smooth, toned stomach. I looked down at myself. The black dress hugged my new curves, and the white top gave the outfit a casual, stylish edge. I looked good, frighteningly good. "Okay," Luke said, his eyes scanning me up and down. "Next, the most important part." He held up a pair of black ankle-strap heels. They weren't stilettos. Thank God. But the heels still looked impossibly high, maybe 2 or 3 inches. "You have got to be kidding me," I groaned. "It's part of the look," he said. "Non-negotiable." I sat on the edge of the bed and slipped my feet into them. They were a perfect fit, which was another unsettling detail in Luke's meticulous plan. I buckled the thin straps around my ankles and tried to stand up. I immediately pitched forward, flailing my arms like a cartoon character. "Whoa!" Luke caught me again, laughing. "You have to walk differently. Smaller steps, heel, then toe. Shift your weight." He held my hands and walked me around the small bedroom like a toddler learning to take their first steps. It was humiliating and surreal. My ankles wobbled, my calves screamed in protest, but after a few clumsy circuits, I started to get the hang of it. The shoes forced me to stand up straighter, to push my chest out and my hips back. They changed my entire posture, making me feel taller, more precarious, but also strangely elegant. "Last touch," he said, holding up a thin, black velvet choker. He gestured for me to turn around. I felt his fingers at the back of my neck, cool and gentle as he fastened the clasp. The soft velvet settled against my throat. As it did, I felt the final changes click into place. My jawline softened, my Adam's apple disappeared, and I felt a strange lightness in my throat. I swallowed. It felt different. "Now look, he whispered, turning me toward the full-length mirror on his closet door. I held my breath. The person looking back at me wasn't Daniel anymore. It wasn't some strange half-man, half-woman hybrid either. The reflection was a complete stranger. A girl. A pretty one. Her hair, my short brown hair, had lengthened into a cascade of soft, wavy brunette locks that fell just past her shoulders. Her face was softer, her cheekbones more defined, her eyebrows gracefully arched, her eyes, my eyes, seemed bigger, brighter, framed by thick, dark lashes I definitely didn't have 5 minutes ago. Her lips were fuller, naturally tinted a soft pink. She was beautiful. I lifted a hand to my face, and she mirrored the movement. My fingers, now longer and more slender, traced the outline of her my new features. It felt like I was wearing a mask, a full-body costume so convincing that even I couldn't see the real me underneath. "Say something," Luke urged, his voice soft. I opened my mouth, intending to say his name, to protest again, but what came out was a shock. "Luke." The voice was not my own. It was higher, smoother, with a melodic quality that was completely foreign. It was a girl's voice. I tried again, just a whisper this time. "This is crazy." The whisper was breathy, feminine. I sounded like her. I sounded like the girl in the mirror. I stared at my reflection, a tidal wave of conflicting emotions crashing over me. I was horrified by the violation, the complete loss of control over my own body. I was terrified of this stranger staring back at me. But beneath the fear, there was something else, a flicker of wonder, a spark of fascination. The girl in the mirror was graceful and alluring, and a part of me, a deep and hidden part, was captivated by her. Luke's eyes met mine in the reflection. He wasn't smirking anymore. His expression was one of genuine, undisguised admiration. "Wow, Daniel," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "You look amazing." The compliment landed strangely, sending a hot blush creeping up my neck and across my cheeks. It wasn't the way a friend compliments another friend. It was the way a guy looks at a girl he finds attractive. And it was directed at me. "Don't call me Daniel," I heard myself say, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. It felt wrong. Daniel was the guy who played basketball and spilled soda on his shirt. He didn't fit this new body. Luke smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "You're right. That name doesn't really suit you right now." He tilted his head, studying me for a moment. "How about Danny? It's close enough for tonight. You're Danny." "Danny," I repeated, tasting the name on my new lips. It felt right. Too right. I wanted to fight it. I wanted to scream that I was still Daniel, that this was all just a costume. But looking at the girl in the mirror, with her soft eyes and delicate features, I couldn't. Daniel was gone, at least for now. In his place was Danny, and Danny was about to go on a date with my best friend. The short walk from Luke's apartment to his car was the most terrifying journey of my life. Every sound, every sensation was amplified. The click-clack of my heels on the pavement was an alarm bell announcing my fraudulence to the world. The gentle evening breeze felt impossibly intimate as it whispered against my bare legs and arms, a sensation my skin was entirely unprepared for. I was acutely aware of the sway of my hips, a natural consequence of the heels that felt both alien and strangely rhythmic. When we reached the car, Luke opened the passenger door for me. It was a simple, chivalrous gesture I'd seen him do 100 times for girls he was dating, but having it directed at me sent another jolt of confused electricity through my system. I slid into the seat, a maneuver made incredibly awkward by the short dress. I spent the entire time fumbling, trying to keep myself covered, my cheeks burning. The drive to the theater was mostly silent. The radio played softly, but the real soundtrack was the frantic pounding of my own heart. I kept catching my reflection in the side window, the unfamiliar silhouette of a girl with soft hair and a worried expression. "You're nervous," Luke stated, not as a question. "Of course I'm nervous," I snapped, my new voice sharp and high. "I'm a guy. Luke, dressed as a girl. We're going to a public place where people we know might see us. No one will recognize you," and he said calmly, his eyes on the road. "Trust me, you don't look anything like Daniel right now. You just look like Danny." He said the name so easily. For him, the transition was complete. As we pulled into the chaotic parking lot of the multiplex, the reality of the situation hit me with the force of a physical blow. The area around the main entrance was a sea of people, flashing lights, and velvet ropes. This wasn't just a movie, it was a major event. Luke parked the car and turned to me. "Ready." I shook my head, my hands trembling in my lap. "I can't do this." He reached over and, to my utter shock, took my hand. His fingers were warm and strong, engulfing my smaller, more delicate one. It was the most familiar hand in the world, the hand I'd high-fived a million times. But now, the contact felt charged with a strange new energy. "Yes, you can," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "We're a couple. Remember, we're supposed to do this." He squeezed my hand. "Just stick with me. Don't let go." His touch was a strange anchor in my sea of panic. I was still terrified, but the thought of navigating that crowd alone was even worse. I took a deep breath, nodded, and let him lead me out of the car. The moment we stepped into the throng of people, I felt it. 100 pairs of eyes turned towards us, or rather, towards me, as a guy. I was used to being invisible, just another face in the crowd. But as Danny, I was a spectacle. Men's gazes lingered, a mix of appreciation and curiosity. Women's eyes swept over me, assessing my dress, my shoes, my hair. It was an intense, unnerving level of scrutiny, but it wasn't hostile. It was admiration. Luke kept his hand firmly in mine, his thumb stroking the back of my hand in a slow, soothing circle. It was a gesture so intimate, so couple-like, that it made my stomach do a nervous little flip. I wanted to pull away, to scream that this was all a lie, but I couldn't. I just held on tighter, my knuckles white. Inside the VIP lounge, the atmosphere was even more intense. The air smelled of expensive perfume and champagne. Luke, ever the charismatic one, handled everything. He showed our tickets, schmoozed with the staff, and got us 2 glasses of sparkling cider. He never let go of my hand. "You're doing great," he whispered in my ear, his breath warm against my skin. The proximity made me shiver. We found a small table in a corner, and I finally had a moment to breathe. I watched the people around us, the glamorous women in their glittering dresses, the handsome men in their sharp suits, and then I looked at us, a handsome guy and his pretty date. We fit in perfectly. No one suspected a thing. "You're the most beautiful girl in this room. You know that?" Luke said, his voice low and sincere. He was looking at me with that same look of admiration from the bedroom, but now it was amplified by the public setting, the pretense of our date. My face felt like it was on fire. "Shut up," I muttered, taking a large gulp of my cider. "You're just saying that." "No, I'm not," he insisted, leaning closer. "I'm serious, Danny. You're stunning." The line between Daniel and Danny was beginning to blur. Daniel would have punched Luke in the arm for saying something so cheesy. Danny, however, felt a flutter in her chest, a confusing mix of embarrassment and pleasure. It was wrong to enjoy the compliment, wrong to feel this way, but I couldn't help it. When they announced it was time to move into the theater, Luke stood and pulled me to my feet. As we walked through the crowded hallway, he slid his arm around my waist. pulling me close to his side. The gesture was possessive, protective. My body reacted before my brain could. I stiffened for a second, then found myself instinctively leaning into his warmth. My head barely reached his shoulder. I felt small, delicate. It was a feeling I had never once experienced in my entire life. Inside the darkened theater, as the lights went down and the opening credits of Starfall Odyssey began to roll, Luke didn't move his arm. He left it there, draped casually over my shoulders. My heart was beating a frantic, irregular rhythm against my ribs. I could feel the warmth of his body through the thin fabric of my dress and top. I could smell the faint, familiar scent of his cologne. This was my best friend, the guy I'd known forever. But in that moment, sitting in the dark, with his arm around me, my hand in his, my body completely transformed, he felt like a stranger, and the person sitting next to him, this girl named Danny. She was a stranger to me, too. The movie we had dreamed of seeing for a year was playing on the screen, a spectacle of sound and light. But I couldn't focus on it. The real drama, the real story, was happening right here, in the deafening silence between two seats. It was a fake date, a means to an end, but the tremor in my hand, the frantic beat of my heart, and the blush I could feel on my cheeks felt terrifyingly, undeniably real. The movie ended, the credits rolled, the epic score swelled, and the lights came up. People all around us were buzzing, talking about the special effects, the shocking plot twist, the incredible performances. I hadn't registered a single second of it. My entire 2.5-hour experience had been a hyper-aware state of sensory overload, dominated by the constant, solid presence of Luke's arm around my shoulders. He finally moved it as the crowd began to file out, and the absence of his warmth left my skin feeling strangely cold. He looked at me, his eyes bright with excitement. Wasn't that incredible? The scene with the supernova mind-blowing. Yeah, I said, my voice a little shaky. Incredible. The journey home was a reverse of the trip there. The silence was no longer tense and anxious. It was thick with something else I couldn't name. An awkwardness. A new awareness that had never existed between us before. I kept my hands clasped tightly in my lap, trying to stop them from trembling. I was intensely aware of how the dress felt against my skin, how my hair brushed against my neck, how the unfamiliar curves of my body settled into the car seat. This wasn't a costume anymore. For the past few hours, it had been my reality. When we got back to his apartment, the first thing I wanted to do was tear these clothes off. I needed to be Daniel again. I needed the safety of my own skin, my own body, my own name. I'm going to change, I announced, heading straight for the bedroom. Okay, Luke said, his voice quiet. I went into the bathroom and shut the door, leaning against it for a moment to collect myself. I looked in the mirror. Danny stared back at me, her makeup slightly smudged, her hair a little messy from leaning against the theater seat. There were faint indentations on her shoulders from the bra straps. She looked tired but beautiful. My plan was simple: take everything off, have a shower, and wait for the morning to erase this whole surreal experience. I reached behind my back to unhook the bra, and then I hesitated. My hands fell to my sides. I leaned closer to the mirror, my gaze tracing the lines of this new face. I touched the soft skin of my cheek, ran a finger over my full lips. I turned to the side, examining my profile, the curve of my waist, the swell of my hips under the black dress. I lifted my hand and placed it over my heart, feeling the soft, unfamiliar weight of my breast. A war was raging inside me. One part of my brain, the Daniel part, was screaming at me. This is wrong. This isn't you. Get out of this body. It was the voice of reason, of my entire life up until 12 hours ago. But another voice, a softer, quieter voice, Danny's voice, was whispering something else. But it's beautiful. Don't you feel it? The softness, the grace. For just a little longer. I bit my lip, torn. I hated the feeling of being manipulated, of being forced into this, but I couldn't deny the strange, intoxicating thrill that had been simmering under the surface all night. The admiring glances from strangers, the feeling of Luke's arm around me, the simple, undeniable aesthetic pleasure of looking in the mirror and seeing someone so pretty. It was a potent, addictive cocktail. The bathroom door opened slightly. Luke poked his head in. He didn't look triumphant or smug. He just looked curious. "You okay in there?" I turned away from the mirror, feeling like I'd been caught doing something I shouldn't. "Yeah, I'm fine." "So So, he asked, his voice gentle. "How was it the whole experience?" I should have said it was awful. I should have told him I hated every second of it. That was the answer he probably expected. The answer that would restore our normal friendship. "It was weird," I said, the words fumbling out. I couldn't bring myself to lie, but I couldn't bring myself to tell the whole truth either. "Uncomfortable." He nodded slowly, but his eyes told me he didn't quite believe me. "I get it." He paused. "You know, I kind of over-prepared. I wasn't sure what look we'd go with. There are a few other things in the closet. If you wanted to see." It was a test. He was offering me a choice. I could say no, end the night, and go back to being Daniel. Or I could say yes, and step even further down this bizarre rabbit hole. The Daniel part of me was screaming, "Say no, get out of there." But Danny was curious. "What kind of other things were?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. A slow smile spread across Luke's face. He knew he'd won. He disappeared for a moment and came back holding a long, shimmering piece of fabric. It was a nightgown, made of a deep blue satin that looked like liquid moonlight. It was simple, elegant, and impossibly soft. "Just to see how it feels," he said, holding it out. My resolve crumbled with trembling fingers. I took off the dress and crop top, my skin tingling as the air hit it. I slipped the satin nightgown over my head. The sensation was pure bliss. If the dress had been a costume, this was a second skin. The fabric slithered over my new curves, cool and smooth and utterly luxurious. It pooled around my feet, making me feel graceful and regal. I walked back to the full-length mirror, the satin whispering with every step. The girl in the reflection looked like a princess from a fairy tale. I felt a giddy, light-headed feeling bubble up inside me. It was a dangerous, thrilling pleasure. This was no longer about a prank or a mission to see a movie. This was about something else entirely. "There's more," Luke said, his voice a low murmur. He opened a drawer and pulled out a small box. Inside, nestled on a bed of black tissue paper, was a lingerie set. It was black lace, even more delicate and intricate than the pink bra, a matching bra and panties. My breath hitched. This was a line I never thought I would cross. This wasn't for a public disguise. This was intimate, private. It was the most forbidden thing I could imagine. And I wanted it. Without a word. I took the box. I went back into the bathroom and closed the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. I took off the nightgown and the pink bra, my body now completely bare. For a long moment, I just looked at myself in the mirror, at this female form that was temporarily mine. Then I put on the black lace. The feeling was electric. It was scandalous. It was empowering. The intricate lace patterns felt like a secret map drawn on my skin. I looked at myself, at the way the black lace contrasted with my pale, smooth skin, at the way it framed my breasts and hugged my hips. A strange, powerful wave of euphoria washed over me. It was the thrill of the taboo, the joy of a secret identity, the intoxicating power of seeing myself as beautiful. It was a feeling so new and overwhelming that it scared me. It was a high, and I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that I was already addicted. I eventually fell asleep on Luke's couch, still wearing the satin nightgown. The lingerie was folded neatly on the coffee table beside me. I was too emotionally and physically exhausted to make it home, and the thought of trying to navigate my apartment while still in this body was too much to handle. My last conscious thought was the feeling of the cool, smooth fabric against my skin, a sensation that was quickly becoming my new normal. Waking up was a process of slow, disorienting confusion. The first thing I noticed was the couch. It felt bigger, less comfortable. The second thing was the air. It felt cool on my bare legs. That was wrong. I always slept in sweatpants. The third thing was the weight on my chest, or rather, the lack of it. My eyes snapped open. I sat up, throwing the blanket off me. I was wearing my own boxer shorts and an old t-shirt, one of Luke's that he'd probably put on me after I'd fallen asleep. I looked down. My chest was flat. My skin had its familiar texture, a faint roughness. I ran a hand through my hair. It was short and bristly. My voice, when I cleared my throat, was my own deep, familiar rasp. I was Daniel again. The relief I expected to feel didn't come. Instead, a profound and hollow sense of loss washed over me. It was like waking up from the most vivid dream of your life, only to find your world gray and muted in comparison. My own body felt alien. My limbs felt heavy and clumsy. The t-shirt was rough against my skin. My own voice sounded like a stranger's growl. I felt empty. It was a phantom limb sensation. But for an entire identity, I missed the softness of my skin, the gentle curve of my waist, the light, melodic sound of my voice. I missed Danny. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. It hadn't just been a prank. It hadn't just been a means to an end. Somewhere in the course of that one night, I had genuinely, truly enjoyed being a girl. I had liked the way I looked, the way I felt, the way the world treated me. And now, it was gone. The magic had worn off, and I was just me, plain, ordinary Daniel. Luke was already in the kitchen, making coffee. He glanced over as I walked in, a questioning look in his eyes. He was searching my face, trying to gauge my mood. "Morning," he said, his voice neutral. "Hey," I mumbled, slumping into a chair at his small kitchen table. I couldn't look at him. I was ashamed. Ashamed of the clothes I'd worn. Ashamed of the things I'd felt. But mostly, ashamed of this crushing disappointment that I was myself again. We sat in silence for a few minutes while the coffee maker gurgled and hissed. The comfortable silence we usually shared was gone, replaced by a thick, awkward tension. He knew. He had to know. He'd seen the look on my face when I'd tried on the nightgown. The way I couldn't stop looking at myself in the mirror. He placed a mug of coffee in front of me. "So," he began, leaning against the counter, "back to normal." I nodded, staring into the black liquid. "Yeah, back to normal." And he prodded gently. "Are you going to punch me, yell at me? Tell me I'm the worst friend in the history of the world?" I looked up at him then. His expression was open, patient. He was giving me the space to be angry, to have the reaction he probably deserved for what he'd done. But anger was the furthest thing from my mind. All I felt was a confusing mix of gratitude and longing. "No," I said, my voice quiet. "I'm not going to punch you." I struggled to find the words to explain the storm of feelings inside me. How do you tell your best friend, your basketball buddy, the guy you've known your whole life, that you secretly loved being the girl he turned you into? How do you admit that the prank he pulled tapped into something deep inside you that you never knew existed? "Luke," I started, my voice cracking slightly. "Last night, it was the weirdest, most terrifying night of my life." I took a breath, forcing myself to be honest. For myself. For him. And I don't know why. And I don't know what this means. But I think... I couldn't finish. The words were caught in my throat, tangled up in years of learned masculinity and fear of being different. Luke pushed himself off the counter and sat down in the chair across from me. He looked me straight in the eye, his gaze unwavering. "You liked it," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. A single, hot tear of shame and relief rolled down my cheek. I quickly wiped it away. But he'd seen it. I just nodded, unable to speak. He didn't laugh. He didn't look shocked or disgusted. He just understood. Finally, I found my voice again, a raw, honest whisper. Maybe I want to try it again, sometime. A slow smile spread across Luke's face. It wasn't the triumphant, mischievous smile of the prankster. It was a warm, gentle, accepting smile. "I know," he said softly. "I was kind of hoping you would." He reached across the table and put his hand on my shoulder. A familiar gesture that suddenly felt new again. "Don't worry, man. This is just the beginning." He stood up and walked over to his bedroom closet, the one that held the mirror where I'd first met Danny. He slid the door open. My jaw dropped. It wasn't a closet, it was an armory. My own wardrobe consisted of a chaotic pile of jeans, t-shirts, and hoodies. Luke's, at least the part I usually saw, wasn't much different. But this was another world. This was the secret heart of his apartment, the source of last night's magic. The closet was huge, a walk-in I never knew existed, and it was meticulously organized. On one side, hung on velvet hangers, were rows upon rows of dresses. There were casual sundresses in bright, cheerful patterns, elegant cocktail dresses in silk and satin, and a few jaw-dropping evening gowns that glittered even in the dim morning light. Below them, shoes were arranged on slanted shelves as if in a high-end boutique. There were sandals, flats, boots, and of course, heels. So many heels. Short, chunky heels like the ones I'd worn, slender, graceful stilettos that looked like beautiful torture devices, colorful wedges for a summer day. On the other side were more casual clothes, skirts of every length and style denim minis, flowing maxis, professional-looking pencil skirts, blouses in a rainbow of colors, from simple cotton to delicate, see-through chiffon, sweaters, jackets, and neatly folded stacks of designer jeans tailored for a woman's body. In the center was a small vanity, complete with a lighted mirror. On its surface were not tools, but treasures. A full array of makeup brushes stood in a crystal holder, palettes of eyeshadow, rows of lipstick, bottles of foundation. It was a painter's studio for a human canvas. Drawers were filled with accessories, sparkling necklaces, delicate bracelets, earrings of every shape and size. And in one drawer, I saw them neatly folded and sorted by color. Dozens of sets of lace and silk, lingerie. I stepped inside, my feet sinking into a plush white rug. I ran my hand along a soft cashmere sweater, then let my fingers ghost over the cool sequins of a party dress. Every single item in this closet, I realized, was probably treated with Luke's impossible chemical. Every piece was a key, a portal to becoming someone else, to becoming Danny. "What is all this?" I breathed, turning to Luke, who was leaning against the doorframe, watching me with a quiet smile. "It's a hobby," he said with a shrug. "A project. I'm a chemist, Dan. I like to experiment. I figured out the base formula a couple of years ago. Since then, I've been perfecting it, curating a collection." "A collection?" I asked, my mind reeling. "For who?" His smile was gentle. "I wasn't sure. I just knew that one day the right person would come along to try it. Someone I could trust." The implication hung in the air between us. He had built this entire world, this incredible possibility, for me. He hadn't just played a prank. He had been waiting, hoping that his best friend had a side to him that he himself didn't even know existed. He had seen Danny in me long before I had. The feelings of betrayal and anger from the day before had completely evaporated, replaced by a profound sense of awe and a strange, overwhelming gratitude. He hadn't trapped me or tricked me. He had opened a door. My life up to this point had been a straight, predictable line: school, basketball, video games, work. It was a good life, a simple life, but standing in this closet, surrounded by a universe of color, texture, and possibility, I realized how small my world had been. The future had always seemed like a continuation of the past. But now there was a fork in the road. A whole new path had opened up. My old life as Daniel felt like a movie I'd already seen. I knew all the scenes, all the lines. The story of Danny. The first page had just been turned. A story of high heels and whispered secrets, of discovering a strength in softness and a power in beauty. A story where my best friend was also my guide, my confidant, and my creator. I turned away from the endless racks of clothing and looked at Luke. The question wasn't if I would do this again. The only question was when. A slow grin spread across my face, the first genuine, unconflicted smile I'd had all morning. "So," I said, my voice filled with a newfound thrilling confidence, "what's Danny wearing next?"